Hello everybody and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to another episode here on the series. My name is Dominic and I'm the host of the Android Factory. Today's episode we're going to go ahead and add filters to our list here. If you haven't been following along our list here, although it looks like a RecyclerView, we're using a library called Epoxy. Really wonderful stuff. I'd highly recommend checking it out, but it's just a fancy wrapper around a RecyclerView. So we're going to go ahead and add filters here to this particular screen, just as a way to kind of demonstrate how to build out the logic of filters, and then actually the interaction of filtering a list. And in this case, it's all going to be client side, but there are many situations where we can go ahead and use an API to also filter our list. So if we take a look at the data here, we have something called a category here. So there's men's clothing here, men's clothing, men's clothing. As we scroll down, we see jewelry, and then I think there's electronics, women's clothing. So there are a handful of different, looks like there's 4 different categories that all of these 20 products fit into. So I figured we can go ahead and make filters for each of those categories to just help round out our implementation here, our screen. So the only 2 things that I've done off screen here is create a basic epoxy model for the layout that I've created here for a particular filter. So we'll just cover this real quick and then we're going to dive into the actual code. So there's really nothing here. Needed to put something here because otherwise the data class complains. So we'll fix that in a little bit, but really just the absolute bare bones. And the only other thing to note here is this little implementation for the view itself. Something very simple, kind of looks like a pill, kind of looks just like a little filter, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a good way to put it, but I think this will be maybe the disabled state, and then the selected state will fill it in with a different color so it looks like it'll pop. We'll play around with the colors to see what looks good, but that's just my immediate thought. Looking at the XML here, it's very simple. It's just a material card view with a handful of different attributes associated with it, and then a text view inside of that just has really just the bare bones to make this look the way that it does. So nothing too crazy. Again, all the code is on GitHub, so please go ahead and check out the description of the video. You'll have everything there. And let's jump right into it here. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to update our application state, right? We're using Redux here. We want to store all this information inside of the store. And so we not only need to store the actual potential filters that we have, but we also need to store which one is selected, much like how we've done the favorited product IDs, the expanded product IDs, to have all of this UI interaction work properly. And so then as we navigate backwards and whatnot, the state is exactly what the state should be. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit to our state here. Alright, so disregarding some of the errors here that we have in the IDE, we've gone ahead and added something to the state here called the product filter info. And I do want to talk about this because it's not, we're now creating a little bit of a nested state here, right? All of the previous examples before, they've just been all top level. They've never had to actually drill into the state to actually get everything. But, this application state is a data class, so we can very easily structure this exactly how we would want. It might make updating it a little bit more, difficult or not as clean, but we can do that. There's not a problem there. But this does help here because I basically didn't want to add these 2 pieces of information high level here, at this level. Instead, now we have one particular class that encapsulates all that information, and it just kind of, maybe makes the separation of the state make a little bit more sense. It's very possible that we'll kind of move these 2 things into something similar, into another nested state at some point, but for now, that works just fine. So inside of here, we're basically saving all of the set of filters that we have, and then the selected filter here, which we default to null. So I don't actually have the filter. We can make this filter class here. It's just going to be a data class. So I've gone ahead and just created a very simple filter here. There's a value here, and then there's a display text. The value is going to be the raw value that corresponds to the particular categories that exist on our products. And then the display text might vary from that. We see here that men's clothing has a lowercase m, along with jewelry has a lowercase j. So it's very possible that we just want to kind of sanitize that and have the different representations of things, or maybe men's clothing changes to like clothing with parentheses m in it and parentheses w for women's. Who knows? The point is we can manipulate that independently of the actual value that we need to filter on. And so it just gives us a little bit of flexibility here. So we've gone ahead and created the filter in our domain package. The other thing here is that we're going to need to create the UI filter, right? So we'll just go ahead and do that as well. This will contain a filter, and it will contain the is selected boolean, right? We can we'll leave them non-default, so we have to specify both of these when creating the filter. Pretty straightforward, right? We need the filter, and then we just need to know some additional information around is it selected or not, so that the UI can actually work the way that we want it to. Bouncing over to the products list view model, this is where we actually end up updating the state, right? So we're told to refresh the products. That makes our API call to fetch all these products, and right now we're just storing the products in the state here. I think this would be a pretty good place to also update the product filter information, because we have all of our products at this point in time. So inside here, we're going to go ahead and update our state with the product filter info equals the application state product filter info. I'm going to go ahead and say the filters is going to equal our products.map. We're going to convert each one of these products into a product filter idea there, so we can go ahead and add filter here, and then let's say the value is going to be it.category, and then for now the display text we're just going to keep the same here, so we'll just say it.category, but we'll leave a little to do there because we might want to clean that up. And then I think that's a set, so we just need to call toSet. And then at the end, we had a selected filter equals null. As we can see here, this does start to get a little bit more complicated, right? Especially with the named arguments, you can see everything in blue here. It starts to get a little gross. So we can work to kind of clean this up a little bit, but for now, just recognize that we are basically converting all of our products into filters. The toSet is really helpful here because each one of these products, this product, this product, this product, this, but the first few products all have the same filter that's being generated, right? The category is the same for each one of them. So calling toSet is going to yield only one filter that says men's clothing in it, as opposed to if we had a list here, there would be 4 filters that all said men's clothing. Okay, so we've gone ahead and updated our state. That's pretty good here. The products list fragment now is going to need a little bit of updating, right? So inside of our flow here, the combine, we can take a look at our store, state flow map. This should look pretty familiar. And then we have the product filter info. We're going to have to add that info here. And now inside of here, we can go ahead and change, not change, but we can actually filter the UI products that get generated from our combine function here. However, this is going to cause us to change a little bit of the information that we're submitting, right? Because right now, if we take a look at our UI epoxy controller, it is a typed epoxy controller of a list of products. So this controller here, the only thing that it ever receives is a list of UI products, and that's really helpful and really nice for this case here. But now we want to have filters inside of this recycler view as well. So we no longer can just have a list of UI products, because we need to also have all of the different filters, and in this case we need all the different UI filters as well, because obviously we need to know which one is selected, how many there are, all that kind of stuff. So this brings up an idea of something called a view state. That is basically, the as you can imagine, the state of the view that encapsulates all of the information that we need in order to actually build the screen accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and call this the products list fragment UI state. This is going to be a data class here, and this is going to encapsulate all the information that we need. So it's basically the concept of the UI model versus just the regular raw model. So we can go ahead and say our filters is going to be a set of UI filters, and then the products is a list of UI products here, right? And so now we can work with this data class instead of just strictly a list of UI products to actually go ahead and build out this screen here. If we ever end up adding things to the screen as well, we can just continuously add data points to this data class and use that as part of our construction for the UI. So the first thing that we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to update our controller to actually handle that class instead of just the list. So we'll do the products list fragment UI state. This is now going to freak out because this build models function is not overriding the correct, it does not contain the correct information. So instead of that list of UI products being nullable, it will be this. And so we can just very easily update a little bit of this to say if data equals null in this case. And then in here, we'll need to say data dot, what was this called? Products dot for each, right? And so now all of this kind of works exactly the same as long as this controller is now presented a piece of information. It's called the UI state. The screen will work accordingly, right? We do have a to-do here to add filters from UI state. So let's go ahead and update the product list fragment to actually go ahead and do that. So this one here, we're going to have to maybe revisit that because that's the empty state that we want to see immediately. So again, I'll put a little to-do there so I don't forget. And then otherwise here, we see that there is this error, right? So it says that it's requiring the product list fragment UI state, and we found the list of UI products. So this is now where we need to kind of change things a little bit. Now we basically need to use this product filter info that is now inside of this block to actually generate that product list fragment UI state. So we're going to go ahead and save this variable, right? Because we have, let's call this just UI products here. We'll save that info there. And then we just need to do a little bit of filtering logic, and we need to return the UI state instead of just those list of products. All right, I'm going to go the brute force way here, and then we'll maybe optimize it in a little bit. So we need to handle basically two different states, right? The product filter info, if the selected filter, if that equals null, that basically means that there's no filter selected, so that we want to show all of them, or the quote-unquote all filter is being selected, and so we want to show all of the different items. So basically there's nothing to filter there. So what I'll do here is we will return at combine the products list fragment UI state. Let me just very easily put this for now, and then our products is going to equal the UI products there. So now we need to actually create our UI filters here. Okay, and similarly to how we have created the UI products here from the products that were in the store, we've created the UI filters here from the filter information that was in the store, right? So for each one of the filters in the store, we map them to the UI filter. Our filter here is just going to be the same, and then our isSelected Boolean gets generated with a similar concept to how this isFavorite and isExpanded stuff gets generated. But we basically ask if the selected filter in the store equals the current filter, if that equals true, because this selected filter here is a nullable operation, right? Or it can be null, let's say. That will return the true or false here for our isSelected. And now instead of our empty set here, as soon as we call toSet, we can very easily just add in our UI filters there. So in this happy case here of the selected filter equals null, we don't need to filter any of these products down, and instead we can just go ahead and return the products list fragment UI state with everything. And then otherwise here we are going to need to return a state that has some stuff filtered here, so we can add in our filters. But then our products here is going to be the UI products. Let's go with .filter, where product.category our selected filters value. Okay, so again, this doesn't really look super nice, but that is the concept. Let me clean this up. Okay, so here we are. We have our full statement here to return everything based upon if the selected filter is null or not. In the other case where it is non-null, we basically just filter things down. Pretty straightforward. There are some similarities here though, so I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up real quick. Alright, and there we have it. Instead of returning from the if statement here, we basically just factored out the only thing that changed there. So in the event that it is non-null, or is null, we just have the whole UI products. Otherwise, we filter them down by the selected filter. And then at here, we just have one simple return statement here to go ahead and return the products list fragment UI state. So, although this is big and gross and it will change in the future, if we take a look at what this actually is here, we see that it's now a flow of products list fragment UI state, which is wonderful. It's exactly what we needed. Instead of just a list of UI products, we now have the whole UI state. So I went ahead and renamed this variable that we observe, and then we just simply say controller.setData UI state. Wonderful. So now we've gone ahead and updated or manipulated the way that we read the store and what we convert that into, and then we actually have now putting that into the UI product epoxy controller. Just want to pause and thank everybody. If you made it this far in the video, please consider liking the video to help me out, and consider subscribing if you are brand new and enjoy the content so far. So my thought here with the filters would be that it would, kind of be like a horizontally scrolling list at the top of those little pills that we had seen, and Epoxy actually has something extremely nicely for that called the Carousel model. I don't exactly remember everything. Yeah, okay, so basically we need to go ahead and provide a certain set of models to it. We can give it the ID. Okay, it looks like we need to give it the models first here, so we can just say that the UI filter models is going to be our data.filters.map, each one of those to the UI product filter epoxy model. That needs just a string for now, and then we can go ahead and add in the UI filter models. Go ahead and attach an ID here, so we can just say filters, and then we're going to say add to this. There's a couple more pieces of configuration that we can add in here, but I want to just get it up and running and see how it looks. But I guess this is a good time to go ahead and implement the actual epoxy model itself. So we don't need this random string value in here anymore. We actually need the UI filter object that we care about, and then also the on filter selected kind of idea. Guess we'll pass out a filter, and we expect nothing in return, so that's pretty straightforward. Here we can go ahead and do a little bit of configuration. So the filter name text view.text is going to be our UI filter.display text. Wonderful. We'll add an on-click listener to the root there, which is going to call the on-filter selected with the UI filter.filter. And then we do need to just do a little bit of that UI management based upon if it is selected or not. So we can go ahead and say val card background color resource ID is going to be if the UI filter is selected, we're going to go with r.color.500, and then otherwise we will say r.color.purple 200. Perfect. And then what we can do, I believe the root, is the material card view, set card background color, just like that instead. So we're going to use context compat to actually get our color here. We've derived what resource that actually needs to be, and then we'll just set that here. So that should be pretty much it for the actual implementation of the epoxy model, and that's wonderful. So instead we can bounce out over here. We'll say that our UI filter equals it. Maybe we'll go ahead and rename some things again. All right, so we've gone ahead and updated this a little bit here. Again, we have a little function pointer for the on filter selected. So let's just go ahead and really quickly create this function. We'll go like that, and this needs a regular filter. So although the body of that function is not implemented, we are now all good here. The carousel model, again, because we are running this build models linearly, the carousel model will be added first to the screen, and then all of our products will come after that. So I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything. I don't know if all the interactions are going to work, but let's go ahead and run it and see where we end up. Came back to life, and we have an illegal epoxy usage must set an ID on a model. I completely forgot to add an ID to this epoxy model here. So let's just go ahead and add an ID of filter.filter.value. That should all be unique. So let's go ahead and see if that fixes everything. Coming back to life here. Okay, all right, so we do have some stuff here. We definitely do. All right, so the whole interaction of selecting is not working 100%, but we do have something on screen here, and that is a very good start. Oh, well, obviously clicking this is not going to do anything because we literally don't have anything here. Oh man, sorry. But all right, let's go ahead and implement this. I do apologize that this video is definitely growing in length a little bit here, but please stick with me. I do think that it is valuable. Hopefully you have been enjoying it so far and it's not too chaotic. We need to update our store when one of these is being selected. So we'll add our view model scope. We'll go ahead and we will Again, just kind of this update boilerplate stuff, current state. Okay, we're ready to go. But I don't think this will actually be difficult, really, because the only thing that we need to do is we need to assign this filter to the selected filter, which is right here. A selected filter, it is of type filter and it's nullable, so really all we need to do here is set that. So I think this is going to be a pretty straightforward one. So if we just return that update current state.copy, we're going to have to, this is where the nesting gets a little bit annoying, because we're going to need to take the current state's product filter info, and we're going to need to copy that, and then we're going to need to say that the selected filter equals filter. So, current state.copy product filter info is the current state product filter info.copy, and if there was another layer in between there or deeper, you'd have to do that again, .copy. So it does get a little annoying the further deep you go, so nesting it is not the best idea if there's not a good solution for it. But in this case, I think it made sense to kind of, put those two together. So, oh my god, it works. Look at that. Jewelry, 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 jewelry. Electronics. Okay. Women's clothing. I'm just going to guess that this works. Yes. Okay. Hell yeah, let's go. Alright, so let's see. When we expand the second one of the men's, we'll go to electronics and expand the last one there. If we go back to men's clothing, boom, this one is already expanded as we would expect. We can go to jewelry, we'll go back to electronics, and the last one is expanded. Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is why I love Redux. It's just so nice. Once you kind of set certain things up, it just makes life really easy to just add these different features in when you've thought about it a little bit in advance. Very good. So I do think, because the video is getting a little bit longer, I want to cut it here. Thank you so much for watching. In the next episode, though, we're going to continue this. We're going to maybe sanitize these items here. We're going to make them maybe look, change some spacing, do whatever the case is. Maybe we're going to, change the display text a little bit so that it, matches or it looks a little bit nicer. And then we'll also have like an all filter that sits at the very front of the entire list, so that you can then kind of remove all of the selected filters, right? Because right now, once you select one, that's it. You can't unselect it, really. So we're just going to need to kind of build out a little bit of, hold on a second. Okay, so I'll take back a little bit of what I had just said. I just reran the app, so we have electronics selected, we have men's clothing selected, everything works the same way. But then if we just select women's clothing, again, it unselects. This logic was very easy to implement. Basically here, we just grabbed the currently selected filter in the store. And then when we were updating the selected filter, I said basically if the filter differed, whatever they had selected, so men's clothing is selected, if jewelry gets selected, that's different than the current filter. So then we set that new filter, jewelry, as the one that's in the store. Otherwise, we set null. So i.e., if they selected the same thing, it would remove the filter that exists currently. I do still think there's a little bit of UI cleanup and a little bit of work that we can do to make this look a little bit nicer, but point is, we do very easily have filtering working here. Not too much of an effort, but a little bit of thought, a little bit of design, and now we can kind of go ahead and continue expanding on this, and then I do think it's time that we start looking at adding to the cart and implementing that logic as well. So, thank you again so much if you made it this far. I know it is a little bit longer of a video. If you have made it, I'd really appreciate a like and or subscribing. Please go ahead and drop a comment as well. It'd be really helpful to know that you guys made it to the end. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a good day.